She had all good intentions, but I don't think she realized the monster that was in her house, which was her son. This man was much older than me. Once again, where's that statistic at? 40% of children sexually abused are abused by children older than them. But he wasn't no child. This cat was easily 17, 18 years old in the house with 8 and 9-year-old children. He was practically a grown man. So the daycare provider, she had all kind of children running in and out of this house. And my mom and dad would drop me off there because they had to work or whatever they were doing. But she wasn't watching. This demon, this monster, will call me upstairs, or sometime I will come upstairs, and I witnessed him. He was forcing his niece, who is the same age as me, maybe 8, 9 years old. He was forcing her to give him oral sex. And I witnessed it on many occasions. And some of his other cousins that will come to the house, I witnessed them. I witnessed him fingering them, penetrating them, and him forcing them to give him oral sex. And this cat was easily 17, 18 years old. And we were only 8 and 9 years old. Now, he never did nothing to me. He only had me watch. I believe the reason for that was he was scared of my dad. Because back in those days, my dad was in the Nation of Islam. Enough said. Enough said. Enough said. He knew if he would put his hands on me in any way, the consequences could be grave. He was already taking a chance with the freaky stuff he was doing with other children there in the daycare and his own cousins. Going back to this statistic. Where is it? Children who don't tell are more likely to develop mental and emotional problems. This same girl who was his niece, who I witnessed her giving him oral sex, and he's 17, 18 years old, and she's only 8, 9 years old. Don't you know she turned to a life of crime, teen pregnancy, very sexually promiscuous, sexually confused? I've seen this from this girl. And one time I saw her, she was out of prison, and I didn't see her in a while. And I said, sis, what's wrong? Why do you keep getting in trouble? Because then I wasn't into counseling and psychology and therapy and all that. But I just knew she was always in trouble. I said, why are you always getting in trouble? What's wrong? And she said, my name was Eric then. She said, Eric, you know what happened to me. And I was like, what are you talking about? She said, at the house with you know who. I said, oh, man. I was a loss for words. So she was saying she's dysfunctional because of the dysfunction that he introduced her to, the sexual abuse. This is just a small microcosm what has happened to thousands, if not millions, countless people all across this country, but particularly black people in America. So before we be judgmental, oh, that sister is crazy. She's out of control. She's always angry. Not that you may not be appropriate, but take into consideration this may have happened to them. This may have happened to them. Again, this is what I do. I do therapy and counseling. And so many of our sisters have been victims of this. T.D. Jakes did a documentary, not that I'm a big fan of his, but he did a documentary a few years ago called Women Thou Art Loose. And in that, it's the first time I heard this statistic, and I believe it's true. It says 1 out of 4 black women has been sexually or physically abused at some point in their life. 1 out of 4 black women has been sexually or physically abused at some point in their life. And we wonder why some of our sisters in our family are so dysfunctional, so angry, and don't trust black men. Again, back in the 50s and 60s, it was easy to point out who Satan was. It was the government. It was the KKK and other white supremacists. And there's still that. It's just covert. But when you have your uncle and even aunts, yeah, they're just as culpable brothers, cousins, ravaging the family, taking little boys' and girls' innocence. And then this is the result of it: substance abuse, mental health problems, physical, being physically abused, substance abuse, choosing mates that they shouldn't be with because their perception of what love and lust is so warped. We wonder why our families are so dysfunctional and out of control. A lot of it stems from sexual abuse. You got to guard your children. Don't let your children just be going to little Johnny's house and you don't know who's at Johnny's house. Johnny could have 5, 6 other adults in there and you don't know what they're into. Check everyone. When you go into the nation's mosque, they check everyone. That's a physical check. But you need to do a mental and visual check with anyone that's in the midst of your children, whether that's the school setting and especially in the home, because the statistics are here. 30% of those sexually abused are abused by family members. I believe that statistic and that percentage is much higher, especially in our community, because those who are closest to you have the most access to you. 30%? I don't believe that. I believe that number is much higher. It's the family members and the close friends of the family coming in. Finishing out are sisters. You have to make better choices of who you bring into your home and around your children. I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. We have to make better choices of who we bring in around our children. I understand it didn't work out with your baby's father, or you got a divorce and you have needs and want and you're lonely. But you have to make better choices of who you're bringing around your children. Some of these brothers are just not fit to be around your family. And this is how this stuff is happening. I've seen it. And I ain't talking about what I've heard or what I think. I've seen it. I've seen it in my own personal life. And I've seen it through counseling and therapy. People just bringing these monsters in. And then they got full access to your girls and your boys. I don't know what the hell they're putting in this food these days. Some kind of steroids or something. But some of these girls look like grown women. For a sane-minded man, follow me and I'll be done. For a sane-minded man, you have to guard yourself, your thinking, and you have to guard your eyes the way some of these girls are built. That's for a sane-minded man and for a man who has all good intent and purposes of being a godly man. You have to. That's why the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that the mother should mostly take care of the girls. And the father shouldn't be being served by girls and giving her baths and close intimate. And that's with his own blood daughter. Someone would be like, that's his daughter. But the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was trying to protect us from things like this happening. He told us that. Yes. He said, watch the close relations with father and daughter to protect from these kind of things. So a sane-minded man, imagine that. You bringing this man in. That's really not his daughter. Even though if you're going that far in a relationship with him, he should think of them as his daughter. That's really not his daughter. You haven't done no background check on him. You haven't asked around who he is. Some of these cats have been in jail for sexual abuse and you don't even know it because you haven't even checked. And your daughter walking around with little shorts on. Got more titties and ass than you do. And you got this sicko in your house. What do you think's going to happen? And then some of these cats are so sick, your boys are in danger. So he's slow dancing and romancing you, whispering sweet nothings in your ear. And while you kikiing and laughing and giggling and falling and tripping all over yourself because you think you got the right one, he's slow dancing and romancing you. And at the same time, he's peeping over your shoulder at your budding daughter, setting her up for the kill to possibly ruin her life. And if he's real sick, watching your son walk back and forth with his sick self, setting him up for the super kill. And the reason why I say the super kill is if this happens to our boys, the damaging effects is more than if it happens to girls, even though both of them are catastrophic. But it's really catastrophic for boys. I told you. Where's it at? 50% of male survivors of sexual abuse start having suicidal thoughts. So we internalize a lot of things. Most of these boys ain't going to tell if that's happened to them. No difference than men who have went to prison and have been sexually abused in there. They're not going to come out and tell that. Tell it to who? Not that no one is available, but it's their mindset. So they internalize it and they turn into a monster. Now we got another monster to deal with in our community because something another monster caused. We have to watch who we are bringing into our home. Sisters and brothers, but mostly sisters, because most of the time, if you split up from your boyfriend or husband, y'all got the children. So I'm not putting all the responsibility on the sisters, but most of the time, if there's a split, most of the time the sisters have the children, and they're bringing these monsters into the home. I've heard stories of women just leaving their children with these men. Hell, I dated a sister before, here in Pennsylvania, and within 2 weeks, I remember I was dating her, and she gave me a key to her apartment and everything, and we were just sitting there chilling on a Friday night. Phone rings. You can tell when it's their girlfriends on the phone. I thought the girlfriends was going to come over and I was just going to go in the room and, let them do their thing. She comes in the room and says, mind you, she had an 8-year-old daughter. I just met her 2 weeks ago. That's when I was, doing my thing. She comes in the room and says, Sharif, do you mind if I go out? I said, well, where are you going? She said, I'm just going out for a few hours. And I'm like, okay. I'm thinking that she's going to take the daughter somewhere. She left the daughter there with me and went out. Ain't come back to 2, 3 in the morning. She ain't know me. How you know me? And you just met me 2 weeks ago. Luckily, I am who I am. I'm not sick like that. But that's what I'm talking about. She ain't know who I was. And she left her daughter unprotected with me. Only known me 2 weeks. I could have did anything, and she did it several times. I'm saying to myself, like, I could be some kind of child molester or something. Got to protect our children. And this happens on a daily basis. Leaving our children unprotected with these monsters. And then this stuff happens. And then they are more susceptible to substance abuse, mental problems, family dysfunction because of sexual abuse, because some nut, some maniac, someone that don't know how to control their desires, thinks it's okay to rub, molest, and grind, and finger, and penetrate a 6, 7, 8-year-old child, boy or girl. Where is the safe sanctuary for our children? And we wonder why. But we have to protect them at all costs. Family members and close friends of the family are doing this, and we can't totally